Candlelight flickered against stained glass windows as Katrin Myers stood before the altar in her ivory wedding gown, strawberry blonde curls cascading beneath a delicate lace veil. At 18, she was marrying a man she'd met only once, the Duke of Ravensshire, a man whispered to be dying. The chapel felt impossibly cold despite the summer heat, and as the organ's final notes faded into silence, Katrin's gloved hands trembled around the prayer book she clutched like a lifeline. Behind her, London's elite had gathered not for celebration, but for tragedy. "Such a shame," Lady Pemberton whispered from the third pew, her voice carrying through the chapel's acoustics. Barely out of the schoolroom, sacrificed to settle her family's accounts. "The Duke," another voice murmured, dripping with false sympathy. "They say the illness wastes him from within. 6 months at most. The poor girl will be widowed before she's 19. Katrin's spine straightened, years of Lady Teresa's discipline preventing her from acknowledging the cruel speculation. Her aunt sat rigid in the front pew, satisfaction carved into her severe features. She had orchestrated this match with ruthless precision, trading Katrin's youth for the Ravensshire fortune and a duchess's coronet. The chapel doors groaned open, silencing the whispers. Every head turned. William Chaplin entered alone, refusing the offered arm of his valet. Tall and broad-shouldered beneath his impeccably tailored morning coat, he moved with deliberate care, each step measured as though navigating treacherous ground. His face, striking even marked by illness, held an austere beauty, pale skin stretched over aristocratic features, deep-set blue eyes shadowed by exhaustion. At 36, the Duke of Ravensshire carried himself with the careful dignity of a man intimately acquainted with suffering. As he reached the altar beside Katrin, she caught the faint scent of bergamot and something medicinal beneath. Up close, she could see the slight tremor in his hands, the tension around his jaw that spoke of suppressed pain. When their eyes met for the first time since their brief introduction weeks ago, she found his gaze unexpectedly clear, intelligent, and, most surprising, apologetic. "Forgive me," he whispered, too low for anyone else to hear as the vicar began the ceremony. His voice, rich and warm despite his visible frailty, sent an unexpected shiver through her. "What I ask of you is unconscionable." Katrin's heart hammered against her ribs. She had expected cold duty, mercenary arrangement. She had not expected this. Genuine regret, a hint of something deeper lurking behind those shadowed eyes. "Do you, Katrin Elizabeth Myers," the vicar intoned, "take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband?" The chapel held its breath. Somewhere behind her, Lady Teresa's fan snapped open with sharp finality. Katrin looked at the dying Duke beside her. This stranger who had purchased her future. This man who had just apologized for a marriage she'd had no power to refuse, and spoke the words that would seal both their fates. "I do." Ravensshire House loomed against the darkening sky, its stone facade blackened by decades of London coal smoke. Katrin followed William through the grand entrance, her wedding gown whispering against marble floors as footmen bowed and disappeared like ghosts into the shadowed corridors. The house felt less like a home than a mausoleum, all towering ceilings and portraits of stern-faced ancestors whose painted eyes seemed to judge her with each step. She expected to be led upstairs to the Duchess's chambers, to face whatever duties awaited a bride on her wedding night. Instead, William turned toward a set of double doors, his hand trembling slightly as he pushed them open. "I thought we might talk first," he said quietly, gesturing to the library within. The room was a sanctuary of leather and parchment, floor-to-ceiling shelves housing thousands of volumes. A fire crackled in the hearth, casting dancing shadows across Persian rugs. 2 wing-back chairs sat angled toward the warmth, a small table between them bearing a silver tea service that suggested this conversation had been planned. Katrin perched on the edge of one chair, her spine rigid with the posture Lady Teresa had drilled into her since childhood. William lowered himself into the opposite seat with visible effort, his face tightening briefly before he regained his composure. "Do you know why I chose you, Katrin?" he asked, his blue eyes studying her with an intensity that made her breath catch. "My family name," she answered carefully. the response Lady Teresa had rehearsed with her. Despite our reduced circumstances, and perhaps because my father once did your father a service. Something flickered across William's face. Disappointment, perhaps, or resignation. He reached for a wooden box inlaid with mother-of-pearl that sat on the table, opening it with deliberate care. Your aunt has a remarkable talent for reducing sacred things to ledger entries. He withdrew a folded letter, its paper yellowed with age, the red wax seal long broken. Do you recognize this hand? Katrin accepted it with trembling fingers. The moment she unfolded the parchment, her heart stuttered. Her mother's elegant script filled the page. Words of devotion and regret, declarations of love for a young William Chaplin, and a final farewell forced by her family's insistence on a more advantageous match. You loved my mother? Katrin whispered, the revelation stealing her voice. With every fiber of my being, William confirmed softly. And she loved me, until your grandfather threatened to disown her if she did not marry the Earl of Harrow instead. He reached into the box again, producing a miniature portrait. The infant, captured in delicate brushstrokes, had the same distinctive gray-green eyes as Katrin's own. This arrived a year after your mother married, William continued, his voice thick with emotion. A gift, she wrote, so I might know the child who could have been ours in another life. He paused, meeting Katrin's stunned gaze. I kept this hidden for 18 years, watching from a distance as you grew. When news reached me of your family's collapse and your aunt's plans to marry you to Kenneth Temple, a man known for his cruelty to his first 2 wives, I knew I had to intervene. Tears welled in Katrin's eyes, blurring the firelight. You married me to protect me. I married you, William said, his words weighted with truth, because you are the daughter of the only woman I ever loved, and because I swore an oath the day this portrait reached me that I would ensure your happiness, even from afar. His smile held no fear despite the shadow of death that hung over him. The physicians give me perhaps a year. Long enough, I hoped, to secure your future. Upon my death, you will inherit everything. No one, not even Lady Teresa, will control your fate again. Katrin's fingers trembled around the miniature portrait as understanding washed over her. This was not a transaction. This dying duke had spent nearly 2 decades as her silent guardian, and now offered his final protection wrapped in the bonds of matrimony. You have been my guardian angel, she whispered. William's hand reached across the small space between their chairs, his fingers warm despite his illness. I had hoped to give you freedom through this marriage, not burden you with an invalid husband. Katrin looked at their joined hands, her smooth youth against his trembling strength, and made a choice that would alter both their destinies. Yet here I remain, she said softly, surprising herself with her boldness. Not fleeing as you perhaps expected. Morning light filtered through the library's heavy curtains, catching dust motes that danced in golden beams. Katrin had not returned to her chambers. Instead, she had spent the night listening as William unraveled the tapestry of the past. How he had followed her mother's marriage from afar, how he had quietly ensured Katrin received invitations to the season despite her family's dwindling fortunes, how he had intervened when Kenneth Temple began making inquiries. You have been my guardian angel, Katrin said softly as she poured fresh tea from the service a maid had brought at dawn. An ailing angel with clipped wings, William replied, accepting the cup. His night of revelations had left him more drawn than before, the shadows beneath his eyes deeper, his hands trembling as he lifted the porcelain to his lips. Yet here I remain, Katrin answered, surprising herself with her boldness. Not fleeing as you perhaps expected. William studied her face, searching for something. You are remarkably like her, your mother, but perhaps stronger. She bowed to her father's will. You faced Lady Teresa's machinations with quiet dignity. A clock chimed the hour, and William grimaced as he shifted in his chair. Katrin noticed immediately. You are in pain. It is a constant companion, he admitted, though some defiance flickered in his eyes. Though some days demand less of my attention than others. Catherine set down her cup decisively. You need rest. I have kept you talking through the night. A worthy exchange of comfort for company. Nevertheless, he did not protest when she rose and offered her arm. Together they walked from the library, his weight against her shoulder heavier than she'd expected. Ascending the grand staircase proved treacherous. Halfway up, William paused, his breathing labored, his free hand gripping the banister with white-knuckled intensity. Catherine waited patiently, her arm steady beneath his hand. There is nothing to forgive, she said when he attempted to apologize. We have all night reached the morning. Surely the staircase can wait another moment. This drew a genuine smile from him, the first she had seen reach his eyes. My practical Duchess. When they finally reached the upper landing, William's valet appeared, his face carefully neutral despite the unusual sight of his master leaning upon his new wife rather than his cane. Catherine retreated to her own chambers, where her ladies maid Mary Sellers waited with wide, curious eyes. You've not slept, Your Grace, Mary observed as she helped Catherine change from her wedding gown. No, Catherine agreed, too weary for pretense. The Duke and I had much to discuss. Mary's hands paused briefly at Catherine's hair. The staff say His Grace rarely sleeps, that his condition worsens when he lies flat. Catherine turned to face her maid. What do you know of his illness? Only whispers, Your Grace. That it began 5 years ago after his return from India. That it weakens him progressively. That the London physicians have tried everything from leeches to electrical treatments. Mary's voice dropped lower. No improvement. None that's lasted, Your Grace. Though Mr. Porter says His Grace fights it like a general at war, refusing to yield ground when most men would have taken to their beds permanently. Catherine gazed out the window at the London morning, carriages already clattering along the cobblestones below. Is there a physician you've heard the staff mention? Someone who has offered His Grace the most relief? Dr. Norris is highly regarded, Mary offered. Though Mr. Porter once mentioned a French doctor, Brousseau, I believe, who had success with similar cases. His Grace consulted him last year in Paris. Brousseau, Catherine repeated, committing the name to memory. Later that afternoon, a knock interrupted her thoughts. Mr. Porter appeared, his face grave. Forgive the intrusion, Your Grace, but His Grace has taken a turn. Dr. Norris has been sent for again, but His Grace asks for you. Catherine followed the valet swiftly, her heart pounding. William's bedchamber was dim, heavy curtains drawn against the afternoon light. He lay propped against pillows, his face ashen, a sheen of perspiration on his brow. Catherine, he said, his voice weaker than before. Forgive the dramatic summons. Hush, she said, taking the seat beside his bed. Save your strength. His hand sought hers, surprisingly warm with fever. I had hoped we would have more time before you were forced to play nursemaid. I am your wife, Catherine replied firmly. In sickness and in health. Those were the vows I spoke. Vows you were coerced to take. Perhaps the circumstances were not of my choosing, she acknowledged. But having heard your truths, I find I would speak those vows again of my own accord. Surprise flickered in his eyes. You cannot mean that. I do. Catherine squeezed his hand gently. You have protected me all my life from afar. Allow me now to care for you in return. William reached toward his bedside table with trembling fingers, retrieving a small velvet box. Inside lay a sapphire ring surrounded by diamonds, the Ravensshire crest engraved inside the band. This was meant for your mother once, he said softly. I would see it on your hand before. His voice broke. Before nothing, Catherine interrupted, slipping the ring onto her finger. She leaned forward to press a kiss to his brow. My heart has been yours since you revealed the truth, and I will move heaven and earth to keep you with me. The weeks that followed became a quiet battle against time and despair. Catherine established herself as mistress of Ravensshire House with a determination that surprised the staff and society alike. When she was not at William's bedside, she was in consultation with Sir Alfred Howland, the Duke's solicitor and closest confidant. "His Grace has left everything in remarkable order," Sir Alfred noted one afternoon as they reviewed documents in the study. "Most unusual for a man of his station." "He is unusual in many ways," Catherine replied, signing the letter they had drafted. "Has there been word from Paris?" "Nothing yet, Your Grace, though these matters often move slowly through diplomatic channels." Catherine's jaw tightened. "We do not have the luxury of slow diplomacy." Sir Alfred studied her with newfound respect. 3 weeks of marriage had transformed the timid girl into a woman of purpose. Her gray-green eyes, once downcast, now met challenges directly. Perhaps a more direct approach is warranted. That evening, while William dozed in his chair by the library fire, Catherine wrote directly to Dr. Marcel Brousseau. She enclosed a bank draft that represented half her personal jewelry's worth, a fortune by most standards, but a fraction of what would be required for the doctor's services. The sapphire ring on her finger caught the firelight as she sealed the envelope, and she found herself touching it like a talisman. William's condition continued its relentless decline. Though he rallied enough to join Catherine for quiet dinners in the library, his strength waned visibly. Yet his mind remained sharp, and he found comfort in reading to her from his favorite volumes. "You should be attending balls and soirees," he chided gently one evening as she arranged his blanket. "Not playing companion to an invalid." "I find I prefer your company to that of the ton," Catherine replied, settling into the chair beside him. "Their conversations pale beside yours." William caught her hand, his thumb tracing circles on her wrist. "You have brought light back to these rooms, Catherine. For that alone, I cannot regret our arrangement." "It is no longer an arrangement to me," she admitted softly, the words tumbling out before she could stop them. "It has become something far more precious." His eyes searched hers in the firelight, and for a moment she thought he might speak. But a coughing spell interrupted, violent enough to leave him gasping and spent. When it subsided, he appeared too exhausted for words. 2 agonizing weeks passed before a response arrived from Paris. Catherine's hands trembled as she broke the French seal. Dr. Brousseau remembered the Duke favorably and expressed willingness to consult again. However, his schedule permitted no travel until the following month, and his fee remained substantial, far beyond what Catherine's jewelry could provide. That night, she sat at her writing desk long after the household retired, drafting letters to every connection Sir Alfred had suggested might assist in bringing Dr. Brousseau to London sooner. As dawn approached, she finally took quill to the document she had avoided, a petition to mortgage a portion of her dower properties. Sir Alfred had discovered a legal precedent involving a duchess who had acted as her husband's proxy during the Crusades. "A dangerous path," the solicitor had warned, "but not without possibility of success." Catherine knew William would forbid such action if he discovered it. The properties were meant to be her security after his death, the income that would keep her independent of Lady Teresa's control. Yet what use was financial security if the man who had protected her all her life was allowed to slip away without a fight? She signed her name with deliberate strokes, then sealed the document before courage could desert her. The following afternoon, Dr. Norris made his regular call. Catherine waited in the corridor as he examined William, noting the grave looks and whispered consultation with Mr. Porter afterward. "Your Grace," Dr. Norris addressed her, his voice heavy with resignation. "His Grace's condition is deteriorating more rapidly than anticipated. I have adjusted his medications, but I must be frank. His prognosis is poor." Catherine's hands clenched at her sides, nails biting into her palms. "How long?" "Without a significant change in treatment, perhaps 4 months. 6 at most." After the doctor departed, Catherine returned to William's side. He had drifted to sleep, his breathing labored even in repose. She studied his face, the noble brow, the strong jaw now tense with pain even in unconsciousness. This man had sacrificed his future to protect hers, expecting nothing in return save the knowledge that she would be safe after his passing. "I will not accept this fate," she whispered, though he could not hear. "Not for you, William. Not when you have given me the most precious gift of all, the right to choose my own path." With newfound resolve, she left his bedside to finalize the arrangements with Sir Alfred. If English law and society's constraints would not permit her to save her husband openly, then she would find another way. The mortgage documents sat on the solicitor's desk, awaiting only his witness signature. "Are you certain, Your Grace?" Sir Alfred asked quietly. "Once this is done, there is no reversing it." Katrin touched the sapphire ring, drawing strength from its weight. "I have never been more certain of anything in my life." Lady Teresa descended upon Ravensshire House like a crow scenting carrion, her black silk rustling as she swept into the drawing room without waiting to be properly announced. Katrin received her with cool civility, the sapphire ring deliberately visible on her hand as she poured tea. "You look remarkably well for a woman playing nurse to a dying husband," Lady Teresa observed, her eyes sharp as she surveyed the room's opulence. "How kind of you to call, Aunt." Katrin's voice carried none of the deference that once would have colored it. "To what do I owe this pleasure?" Lady Teresa's lips thinned. "Rumor has it you've been selling your jewels. I came to ensure you weren't being foolish with what little you brought to this marriage. My jewels are mine to dispose of as I see fit. And when they're gone, what then?" Lady Teresa leaned forward, her voice dropping to a hiss. "You must think of your future, Katrin. Once the Duke passes, and he will pass no matter what foreign quackery you pursue, you'll need family support. A young widow alone in the world." Katrin set down her teacup with deliberate care, meeting her aunt's gaze without flinching. "My future is with my husband, for as long as God grants us." Lady Teresa's laugh was brittle. "Such naivety. The man has months at best. You would waste your youth and beauty on a hopeless cause when you could be planning a sensible second match. Some causes become worthy precisely because they seem hopeless." Katrin rose, her posture rigid with barely suppressed fury. "Is there anything else you wish to discuss, Aunt?" "I must return to His Grace." The older woman stood, straightening her gloves with pointed movements. "Remember your position, Katrin. A duchess you may be for now, but soon enough you'll be a widow in need of family support. Don't come begging when you've squandered everything on false hope." "I have found my family," Katrin responded, touching the sapphire, "and it is here at Ravensshire." After her aunt departed, Katrin's composure crumbled. She stood at the window, watching Lady Teresa's carriage disappear down the street, her hands trembling with reaction. Sir Alfred's quiet knock interrupted her thoughts. "It is done, Your Grace," he announced. "Dr. Brousseau will arrive within the fortnight." "But the cost?" "Has been arranged," Katrin finished. "Thank you, Sir Alfred, for everything." The solicitor hesitated at the door. "Your Grace, His Grace will discover what you've done. The mortgage, the jewels." "I know," Katrin said quietly. "But by then, perhaps it will no longer matter." William discovered her sacrifices sooner than she'd hoped. She found him in the library 3 days later, mortgage documents spread across his desk, his face pale with fury and something that looked dangerously close to despair. "You mortgaged your dower properties," he said, his voice tight. "Do not deny it. Sir Alfred confessed all this morning." Katrin raised her chin. "They are mine to pledge, but not enough for what Brousseau proposes." William struggled to his feet, leaning heavily on his desk. "Katrin, I forbid you to sacrifice your future security for what may be a fool's hope." "You forbid me?" Katrin's eyebrow arched. "I did not realize I had married a tyrant rather than a duke." Despite his weakness, William's lips curved slightly. "Not a tyrant, my love. A realist. The treatments may fail. Or they may succeed," Katrin countered, moving closer. "Would you deny me the chance to fight for our future together?" William studied her face, seeming to search for something in her expression. "If our positions were reversed," he asked slowly, "what would you have me do?" Katrin did not hesitate. "Everything possible. Even the impossible. Even sell Ravensshire land? Ancestral holdings passed down for generations. Land is dirt and stone," Katrin replied passionately, her voice breaking. "You are flesh and blood and the keeper of my heart. I would trade every acre, every jewel, every brick of Ravensshire House to keep you by my side." William's eyes glistened with unexpected moisture. He reached for her hand, drawing her closer. "I have loved you since the moment I saw you step into society 3 years ago," he confessed. "The living image of your mother, yet entirely yourself. I married you to protect you, yes, but also because my heart recognized its match despite all reason." Katrin's breath caught. 3 years. "I watched you dance at your debut, so young and vibrant, and thought my heart would break with wanting what I could never have. When your family's ruin gave me an excuse to intervene, I told myself it was duty. But it was always love, Katrin. Always you. Then trust that heart now," Katrin pleaded, her hands framing his face. "Let me fight for us as fiercely as you have protected me all these years. Trust my heart as I have trusted yours." William pulled her into his arms, his strength momentarily belying his illness. "You are certain? Once this path is chosen—" "I chose it the morning after our wedding night," Katrin interrupted, "when I stayed in the library until dawn rather than flee to my chambers. I chose you, William. Now let me save you." His forehead rested against hers. "Then fight, my fierce Duchess, and I will try to be worthy of such devotion." The morning Dr. Brousseau was expected to arrive, Katrin dressed with particular care. She chose a gown of deep blue that matched William's sapphire and arranged her hair simply, without the elaborate curls fashionable that season. "You look radiant," William observed from his chair by the window. Though still desperately ill, he had insisted on being dressed and moved to the sitting room to receive their guest. Like a Renaissance angel come to life. Katrin smoothed her skirts, oddly nervous. "I pray Dr. Brousseau brings hope with him from Paris." "You have already brought hope, my dear," William replied. "More than I dared dream of in my final days." "Do not speak of endings," Katrin admonished gently. "Today marks a beginning." A commotion at the entrance announced the doctor's arrival. Minutes later, Sir Alfred ushered in a man of medium height with intelligent dark eyes and a neatly trimmed beard. He carried a leather case and bore himself with quiet confidence that immediately commanded the room. "Dr. Brousseau," Katrin greeted him, extending her hand. "Your Grace has been most anticipated." "Your Grace," he replied, bowing over it with continental elegance. "The Duke's letters spoke of your beauty, but failed to capture the determination in your eyes." William struggled to rise, but Dr. Brousseau waved him back with professional authority. "Save your strength, your Grace. We have much work ahead if you are to dance with your bride at Christmas." After a thorough examination conducted behind closed doors, Dr. Brousseau conferred with Dr. Norris while Katrin waited anxiously in the drawing room. When the doctors emerged, Norris looked skeptical, but Brousseau appeared cautiously optimistic. "The Duke's condition is grave," Dr. Brousseau explained, his French accent lending musicality to the dire words. "But not beyond hope. I have seen similar cases in India respond to a combination of treatments, some from Western medicine, others from Eastern traditions." "Can you help him?" Katrin asked directly, her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles whitened. "With time, proper care, and considerable resources, yes, I believe so." He hesitated, glancing at Dr. Norris. "However, the treatment is experimental and intensive. It will require my presence for at least 4 months, specialized equipment from Paris, and medications that must be imported at significant expense." Dr. Norris cleared his throat. "Your Grace, the cost would be astronomical, even for the Ravensshire estates." "The cost is irrelevant," Katrin declared without hesitation. her voice ringing with absolute certainty. Sir Alfred stepped forward, his expression grave. "Your Grace, I must speak plainly. Her Grace has already mortgaged her dower properties and liquidated her personal jewels. To proceed further would require—" "Whatever is required," Catherine interrupted, meeting Dr. Brousseau's eyes steadily. "Name your price, doctor. My husband's life is worth more than any sum." Dr. Brousseau studied her for a long moment, something like admiration crossing his features. "I have a counter-proposal, if I may, Your Grace. I shall accept no payment until improvement is clearly established. If the treatment fails, you owe me nothing but my expenses. If it succeeds—" He smiled slightly. "Then we shall discuss compensation when the Duke is well enough to negotiate on his own behalf." Catherine felt tears spring to her eyes. "Doctor, that is beyond generous." "It is my professional assessment," Dr. Brousseau replied, "and perhaps a personal conviction that medicine should serve hope rather than profit." The treatment began the following day. Dr. Brousseau's regimen proved as demanding as he had warned. Bitter tinctures extracted from eastern herbs that William choked down 3 times daily. Electrical treatments using a device shipped from Paris that made his muscles spasm and left him gasping. Dietary restrictions that eliminated nearly everything he had once enjoyed. Hot compresses infused with medicinal oils that filled the house with pungent scents. Catherine became nurse, guardian, and constant companion. She measured medications, adjusted temperatures, recorded every symptom in a leather journal Dr. Brousseau provided. The weeks blurred together in an exhausting rhythm of treatments and recoveries, small crises and hard-won victories. There were nights when William's fever spiked so high that Catherine sat vigil beside his bed, bathing his face with cool cloths and whispering prayers she hadn't spoken since childhood. Mornings when the treatments left him too weak to rise, when despair threatened to overwhelm them both. But Catherine never wavered. When William tried to apologize for the burden, she silenced him with fierce tenderness. When he suggested she rest while Mary took her place, she refused. She had promised to move heaven and earth, and she would not break that vow. Dr. Brousseau watched this devotion with quiet approval. "I have treated royalty and beggars," he told William one afternoon when Catherine had finally been persuaded to take a brief walk in the garden. "But I have never witnessed love like this. It is, perhaps, the most powerful medicine of all." 1 month into treatment, Dr. Brousseau conducted his weekly examination with particular thoroughness. When he emerged from William's chamber, he found Catherine pacing the corridor, her face drawn with anxiety and exhaustion. "Your Grace," he said, and his smile transformed his usually serious expression. "His Grace's heart grows stronger. The improvement is slight but measurable. We have turned a corner." Catherine's knees weakened with relief. She reached for the wall to steady herself, and Dr. Brousseau caught her elbow with gentle concern. "Now," he said firmly, "you must rest. A patient needs a healthy nurse, non?" But Catherine was already moving toward William's door, desperate to see this miracle for herself. The assault came 6 weeks into treatment, precisely when William had begun to show genuine improvement. Mr. Porter announced the visitors with visible discomfort. Lady Teresa, accompanied by 2 stern-faced gentlemen whose very bearing spoke of authority and judgment. "Sir Jimmy Stokes of the Royal College of Physicians," Mr. Porter intoned reluctantly, "and Mr. Kenneth of Lincoln's Inn." Catherine received them in the drawing-room, her spine straight despite the dread coiling in her stomach. William had insisted on joining her, though the effort of dressing and descending the stairs had left him pale and breathless. He sat now in a wing-back chair, his hand gripping the armrest with white-knuckled determination. "My dear Duke," Lady Teresa exclaimed with false concern, sweeping into the room, "we come out of deepest worry for your health and estate." Sir Jimmy stepped forward, his expression grave with professional certainty. "Your Grace, reports have reached us of unorthodox treatments being administered by a foreign physician without proper English credentials. The Royal College has concerns about your well-being. And I, added Mr. Kenneth, producing a leather portfolio, have been consulted regarding the legal implications of certain financial decisions made without clear consent from your grace. Substantial properties mortgaged, assets liquidated. All while you were gravely ill and possibly unable to make sound judgments. Lady Teresa's triumphant smile left no doubt who had orchestrated this intervention. We are concerned, Your Grace, that your illness has prevented you from protecting your interests adequately, that you have been, her gaze flickered dismissively toward Katrin, unduly influenced by emotional considerations. Katrin felt rage building in her chest, hot and fierce, but kept her expression serene. How thoughtful of you to concern yourselves with my husband's affairs. It is the duty of the medical profession, Sir Jimmy replied stiffly, to prevent exploitation of the gravely ill by those who might profit from their incapacity. And the legal profession, Mr. Kenneth added, adjusting his spectacles, to ensure estates are not improperly diminished during periods of questionable judgment. William's face had gone rigid with suppressed anger. Gentlemen, I assure you, I remain in full possession of my faculties. Of course, Your Grace, Lady Teresa soothed, moving closer with predatory grace. But in your weakened condition you may be unduly influenced. Young ladies can be impulsive, making rash decisions that jeopardize centuries of noble legacy for temporary sentiment. What my aunt means, Katrin said, stepping forward with deliberate calm, is that she believes I have manipulated my husband into squandering his fortune on experimental treatments, that I am a fortune hunter exploiting a dying man. The room fell silent at her directness. Lady Teresa's face flushed with indignation. Is this true, Lady Teresa? William asked quietly, his voice carrying ducal authority despite his weakness. Before she could answer, the door opened to admit Sir Alfred and Dr. Brousseau, their timing suspiciously perfect. Forgive the intrusion, Sir Alfred announced, but I believe these gentlemen should be present for this discussion. Katrin looked to William, who nodded slightly. She drew a breath and turned to face the assembled company, channeling every ounce of strength she possessed. Gentlemen, Lady Teresa, what you witness today is not the desperation of a fortune hunter, but the devotion of a wife. Her voice rang clear and unwavering. Before you all, I make this proclamation. Every acre I possess, every jewel I own, every shilling of my inheritance, all shall be pledged to my husband's recovery. I would surrender everything for the Duke's life. Lady Teresa gasped. You cannot. The law, Katrin continued, her gray-green eyes blazing, permits a wife to dispose of her own property as she sees fit. And make no mistake, I would surrender everything I possess and more. Dr. Brousseau stepped forward, his French accent pronounced but his English impeccable. If I may, Your Graces, the treatment I propose is not experimental in the sense Sir Jimmy suggests. I have documented cases of recovery in India and Russia, witnessed by physicians of international standing. Foreign anecdotes, Sir Jimmy scoffed. Documented medical evidence, Dr. Brousseau corrected firmly, producing a thick folder from his case. And I offer a guarantee few physicians would dare. I shall accept no payment until improvement is clearly established. His Grace's condition has measurably improved in 6 weeks. His heart rate has stabilized, his breathing has eased, his stamina increases daily. This unexpected declaration silenced even Lady Teresa momentarily. William reached for Katrin's hand, drawing her to his side. When he spoke, his voice carried the full authority of his rank despite his physical weakness. Sir Jimmy, Mr. Kenneth, I appreciate your concern for propriety, but I am of sound mind, if not yet sound body. I declare before all present that I consent fully to any treatment Dr. Brousseau deems necessary, and to any financial arrangements my wife makes toward that end. The Duchess acts with my complete confidence and authority. Sir Alfred produced a document from his portfolio. I have prepared a formal declaration of proxy, granting Her Grace authority to act on the Duke's behalf in all medical and financial matters. If Your Grace would be willing to sign before witnesses. William took the offered pen, his hand steady as he signed his name with deliberate strokes. Sir Alfred then presented it to each man in the room for their signatures. "This is highly irregular," Mr. Kenneth muttered, though he added his name after a moment's hesitation. "Perhaps," Sir Alfred conceded, "but entirely legal, and witnessed by men of impeccable standing." Lady Teresa's face had gone white with fury. "You will regret this," she hissed at Katrin. "When he dies despite your foolish expenditures, do not come begging at my door." William's voice cut through the tension like a blade. "Lady Teresa, you have been my wife's guardian for many years. For that service you have my gratitude. But I must insist that you never again speak to the Duchess of Ravensshire in such a manner, or you shall find yourself unwelcome in any house where the Ravensshire name carries weight." With a final glare, Lady Teresa swept from the room, the two gentlemen following in awkward silence. As the door closed behind them, William's strength seemed to desert him completely, and he sagged in his chair. Katrin knelt beside him, her hands framing his face. "You were magnificent." "Worth it?" William whispered, a smile playing at his lips. "To see your aunt speechless at last." The months that followed blurred together in a rhythm of medicine and devotion, crisis and recovery, despair and hard-won hope. Dr. Brousseau's regimen demanded everything. Bitter draughts at dawn, electrical treatments that left William trembling, compresses that must be changed every 3 hours regardless of the clock. Katrin became adept at reading the subtle signs of his body, knowing before he spoke when pain threatened to overwhelm him, when exhaustion required rest despite the schedule. Society buzzed with rumors that reached Katrin through Mary's careful reports. Some called it romantic, the young duchess who defied convention to save her dying husband. Others deemed it scandalous, whispers of wasted fortunes and foreign quackery, predictions that she would be left penniless when the inevitable occurred. Katrin ignored them all. Her world had narrowed to the rise and fall of William's chest, the daily measurements Dr. Brousseau recorded, the incremental victories that meant everything and nothing to those outside Ravenshire's walls. The quiet nights became their sanctuary. When treatments allowed, William would sit propped against pillows while Katrin read aloud from his favorite volumes. Poetry, philosophy, the occasional novel that made them both laugh. Their hands remained intertwined throughout, his thumb tracing absent patterns on her wrist as though memorizing the feel of her pulse. "Why?" William asked one evening in late February, his voice stronger than it had been in weeks. The fire crackled beside them, casting golden light across his face. "Why fight so hard for me, Katrin? You could have let nature take its course, inherited everything, lived as you pleased." Katrin set down her book, meeting his gaze directly. "Because I discovered something I never expected in this arranged marriage." "What was that?" "That love is not a luxury for the young and healthy," she said softly. "It is a choice made daily, in sickness as in health, in hope as in despair. I choose you, William. Every morning when I wake, every night when I pray. I choose us." His eyes glistened in the firelight. "I do not deserve such devotion." "You protected me when I was defenseless," Katrin reminded him, squeezing his hand. "You loved my mother enough to safeguard her daughter. Now I choose to love you enough to fight death itself." William brought her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles. "If I recover, when I recover," he corrected at her sharp look, "I shall spend every day proving worthy of that choice. This I swear to you." By the 3rd month, the changes became undeniable. William could walk from bedchamber to library without assistance, his steps growing steadier each day. Color returned to his face, transforming the marble pallor into something approaching health. He could sit for hours without exhaustion overwhelming him, could engage in conversations that ranged beyond mere pleasantries, could even manage the occasional jest that made Katrin laugh with relief. Dr. Brousseau documented each improvement with meticulous precision, though Katrin could see the satisfaction in his eyes during weekly examinations. "Remarkable," he would murmur, checking William's pulse, listening to his heart. Truly remarkable. March arrived with unseasonable warmth, coaxing the first spring flowers from Ravenshire's gardens. William insisted on walking the grounds one afternoon, his arm linked with Catherine's more for companionship than support. They stood together in the early sunshine, watching crocuses push through the dark earth. Rebirth, William observed quietly. Rather apt symbolism, don't you think? Catherine leaned her head against his shoulder, breathing in the scent of spring and bergamot and life. I prefer to think of it as new beginnings. As April bloomed across London, Dr. Brousseau announced his intention to return to Paris. He had remained far longer than originally planned, cancelling engagements with European nobility to see William's recovery through its critical phase. Your improvement continues to astonish me, Your Grace, he told William one morning as he conducted his final examination. While you must maintain the regimen we have established, I believe the worst is behind you. The treatments have done what I hoped, given your body the strength to heal itself. Thanks to your skill, William acknowledged, clasping the doctor's hand warmly. And your wife's determination, Dr. Brousseau replied, turning to Catherine with a bow. I have treated royalty and revolutionaries, Your Grace, but I have never witnessed love like yours. It has been an honor. Catherine felt tears threaten. You gave us a future, Dr. Brousseau. How can we ever repay such a gift? The French physician smiled, that rare expression that transformed his serious features. Live well, Your Graces. Love freely. And perhaps, when your first child arrives, you might write and tell me if they have their mother's determination or their father's stubborn refusal to yield to fate. William laughed, the sound rich and full in a way Catherine had never heard before his illness. Both, I suspect. God help us all. That evening, as they sat together in the library that had witnessed so many of their struggles, William drew Catherine into his arms with a strength that had been absent for months. 3 months ago, he said softly, his lips against her hair, I was preparing to die. Now I find myself preparing to live. To truly live, Catherine, for the first time since India stole my health. Catherine tilted her face up to his. Then let us waste no more time on what was lost. Let us build what we have found. His kiss tasted of bergamot tea and spring air and promise. A seal on the future they had fought so desperately to claim. William stood at the library window without support, watching April rain sweep across Ravenshire's gardens. He was fully dressed for the first time in months, not in the loose robes of an invalid, but in proper morning attire that fit his frame with tailored precision. The sight stole Catherine's breath as she entered the room. You look magnificent, she said, her voice catching with emotion. William turned, and the smile that lit his face held none of the shadows that had haunted it for so long. I feel reborn. Dr. Brousseau leaves for Paris this afternoon, and I find myself almost sorry to see him go. He saved your life. No, William corrected gently, crossing to take her hands. You saved my life. He merely provided the tools. They stood together in comfortable silence until a knock announced Dr. Brousseau's arrival for his final farewell. The French physician embraced William with uncharacteristic emotion, then turned to Catherine with eyes that gleamed suspiciously bright. Your recovery astonishes me, Your Grace, he said to William. I have witnessed many triumphs in my career, but few as complete as this. We owe you a debt beyond measure, Catherine replied. Dr. Brousseau shook his head. I ask only 2 things as payment, if you will grant them. Name them, William said. First, that you write to me when your child is born. I should like to attend the birth, to ensure both mother and child thrive. Catherine felt heat rise to her cheeks at this assumption of their future, though William's hand tightened warmly around hers. And the second? William prompted. Dr. Brousseau's smile turned wistful. That whenever I visit England, you will teach me about love. For I have witnessed something between you that many men search a lifetime to find, and I confess myself envious. William laughed, rich and full. Done on both accounts, though I warn you, I am hardly an expert. On the contrary, Dr. Brousseau replied, glancing at Catherine. You have won the devotion of a woman who faced down society, medicine, and law to save you. I can imagine no greater romantic triumph. After the doctor's departure, William drew Catherine to the window seat where spring rain painted the glass. I have been considering how to mark this new beginning, he said, his fingers tracing the line of her cheek with newfound confidence. Your recovery is celebration enough, Catherine assured him. Perhaps for you. William withdrew a small velvet pouch from his waistcoat. But I wish the world to know what you have done. How completely you have transformed not just my health, but my heart. From the pouch he spilled a stunning diamond necklace, the stones catching light even on this gray afternoon. This is the Ravensshire bridal necklace, worn by duchesses for 2 centuries. I had it reset for you while you slept these past weeks. Every stone cleaned, every setting strengthened. As you have strengthened me. Catherine's fingers trembled as she touched the diamonds. William, it's breathtaking. He fastened it around her neck with steady hands, the weight substantial yet comfortable against her skin. In 2 weeks we shall host a ball, he declared, to introduce you properly as my duchess, not as the young girl sacrificed to a dying man, but as the woman who taught me that love is stronger than death itself. Catherine met his eyes in the rain-streaked window's reflection. Society will talk. They always do. Let them, William replied, his voice carrying absolute conviction. I wish all London to witness what I proclaim today, that you, Catherine Chaplin, Duchess of Ravensshire, have given me not just life but purpose. Before all who attend, I shall dance the first waltz with my wife as a husband restored by love. Then I accept both the necklace and the dance, Catherine said, turning to face him fully. For I find I have developed quite a taste for defying expectations. The next 2 weeks passed in a whirlwind of preparation. Invitations were sent to every notable family in London, their wording carefully crafted by Sir Alfred to intrigue without revealing too much. The ballroom was opened and aired, chandeliers cleaned until crystal drops sparkled like frozen stars, floors polished to mirror brightness. Cook planned menus while the housekeeper oversaw an army of additional staff hired for the occasion. Catherine's modiste delivered a gown of sapphire silk that whispered against marble floors and caught light like water. It complemented the Ravensshire diamonds perfectly, the blue echoing the ring William had given her months ago. Her strawberry blonde hair was arranged in soft curls that framed her face, with strategic locks left loose to soften the formal style. On the evening of the ball, Catherine stood before her mirror while Mary made final adjustments. The woman reflected back was almost unrecognizable from the frightened 18-year-old who had married a dying duke. This Catherine had steel in her spine and fire in her eyes, diamonds at her throat and sapphire on her finger. Symbols not of wealth but of battles fought and won. A knock preceded William's entrance. He wore full ducal regalia, black evening coat, silver waistcoat embroidered with the Ravensshire crest, breeches and stockings that spoke of aristocratic formality. No cane marred his bearing. He stood tall and proud, every inch the Duke's society had once written off as doomed. "My Duchess," he said, his voice thick with emotion as he took in her appearance. "You outshine every diamond ever mined." Catherine crossed to him, her hand finding his with practiced ease. "Are you ready to scandalize London, Your Grace?" William's smile held both mischief and determination. "I have been ready since the moment you chose to fight for me rather than accept my death. Tonight, we show them what devotion can accomplish." Together they descended the grand staircase toward the ballroom where society awaited, ready to rewrite the story London had written about them, transforming tragedy into triumph, duty into choice, arrangement into the deepest love. The ballroom of Ravensshire House glittered with hundreds of candles, their light captured and multiplied by crystal chandeliers that hung like frozen constellations above the assembled guests. Every notable family in London had accepted the Duke and Duchess's invitation, drawn by curiosity about the miraculous recovery that had become the season's most compelling tale. Catherine stood at the entrance, William's hand warm and steady beneath hers. The Ravensshire diamonds adorned her throat, complementing the sapphire silk that whispered against marble floors. Her heart quickened as she observed the gathering. Many of the same faces that had once whispered of her unfortunate match now turned toward them with undisguised interest. The majordomo struck his staff against the floor, sending a ripple of silence through the crowd. His Grace the Duke of Ravensshire and Her Grace the Duchess of Ravensshire. Every head turned. Lady Eunice's fan snapped open in surprise. Sir Jimmy Stokes's mouth formed a perfect circle of astonishment. And there, near the refreshment table, stood Lady Teresa, her face rigid with disbelief as William descended the grand staircase without cane or support, his stride confident and strong. Whispers erupted like wildfire. Can it be? Impossible! He looks 20 years younger. William guided Catherine to the center of the ballroom with assured steps that showed no trace of his former weakness. He nodded to the orchestra, and the room hushed once more. Before we commence this evening's festivities, William announced, his voice carrying effortlessly through the space, I wish to honor the woman who has made this gathering possible. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Catherine felt her cheeks warm as William turned to face her directly, though his words remained pitched for all to hear. 6 months ago, I stood at death's door with physicians offering no hope of recovery. When all of London believed the Duchy of Ravensshire would soon seek a new master, one woman refused to accept that fate. His gaze never left Catherine's face. My wife defied convention, risked scandal, and pledged everything she possessed to preserve not merely my life, but the bond between us. The room grew so silent that the gentle rustle of silk gowns seemed thunderous. Before this assembly, I declare what medicine has proven and what my heart has always known, that love, when founded on courage rather than convenience, can triumph even over death itself. He extended his hand to Catherine, palm up in formal invitation. I ask you now, Catherine Chaplin, Duchess of Ravensshire, for the honor of this dance, the first of many we shall share in the years to come. The honor is mine, your grace, Catherine replied, her voice clear despite the emotion tightening her throat. As William guided her into the opening turn of the waltz, the assembly remained frozen in astonishment. Then slowly, applause began. Tentative at first, then swelling until it nearly drowned the orchestra's melody. Other couples joined them on the floor, though a respectful distance was maintained. They moved together with perfect synchronicity, William's strength evident in every turn, every step. Catherine caught glimpses of amazed expressions, heard fragments of whispered conversations that had shifted from pity to admiration. Somewhere in the crowd, Lady Teresa slipped quietly toward the exit, her social defeat complete. When the waltz concluded, William addressed the assembly once more. Tonight marks not only my return to health, but the true beginning of our marriage. Henceforth, the Ravensshire name shall be synonymous not with cold duty or ancient privilege, but with devotion's transformative power. He turned to Catherine, taking both her hands before the watching hundreds. And to my Duchess, whose courage saved not merely my life but my soul, I offer what I should have given from the first, not an arrangement of convenience, but a marriage of complete and absolute love. The ballroom erupted in applause. Ladies dabbed at tears with lace handkerchiefs. Even crusty Lord Gregory raised his glass in silent toast. As the evening wore on, guest after guest approached to offer congratulations. Catherine handled each with grace, deflecting personal praise to emphasize Dr. Brousseau's skill, while William spoke of his wife's unwavering devotion. Society regarded them differently now. No longer the pitted child bride and dying duke, but a couple who had earned their happiness through courage and sacrifice. Near midnight, as festivities showed no sign of waning, William drew Catherine away from the crowd and onto the moonlit terrace. Stars glittered above, rivals to the diamonds at her throat. "Happy?" he asked simply. Catherine nodded, words suddenly inadequate for the fullness in her heart. William's hand cupped her cheek, his thumb tracing the curve of her smile. "When I married you, I hoped only to secure your future before my death. I never dreamed you would instead secure my life. Life and love, Katrin corrected gently, for I have discovered they cannot truly exist apart. William's kiss was tender yet filled with promise, the seal on a covenant stronger than the marriage vows they had once exchanged as strangers. When they parted, his forehead rested against hers, his breath warm against her lips. The Tun shall remember this night, William whispered, not for spectacle or scandal, but for the truth it reveals, that what begins in duty may, with courage, blossom into the most profound devotion. Katrin smiled, her fingers intertwining with his. And that love, when freely chosen, is the greatest fortune of all. From the ballroom came the opening notes of another waltz, beckoning them back. William offered his arm with a formal bow that held playful warmth. Shall we continue to scandalize society, Your Grace? Katrin placed her hand upon his arm, the sapphire ring catching moonlight. Until the last candle burns out, Your Grace, and for all the nights thereafter. As they returned to the ballroom, the Ravensshire diamonds gleamed at Katrin's throat, symbols not of wealth or status, but of the legacy they would build together. A legacy founded not on arrangement or obligation, but on the most radical choice of all, to love freely, fight fiercely, and transform duty into devotion that would echo through generations. They danced until dawn broke over London, and still the music played.